After uniting China, Mao Zedong famously proclaimed, "One day we will set up the Earth Control Committee." So according to the Chinese historian Chang, Mao Zedong actually believed that one day China will control the entire globe. Why is that? Well, Mao Zedong looked at the Chinese birth rate. So after 20 years of very brutal war, first it was a civil war between the Chinese communists and the Chinese nationalists, and that war got combined with the Japanese invasion. So it was a three-way war, like the War of the Three Kingdoms. Mao Zedong himself compared the Chinese Civil War to the War of the Three Kingdoms. And after that very brutal civil war, finally there was peace. Mao Zedong united the country. After 20 years of just warlords and Japanese and communists and nationalists fighting, and in that crazy chaos, some warlords were even pro-communists, others were pro-nationalists, and some were pro-Japanese. But again, finally there was peace, and Mao Zedong introduced basic hygiene into the countryside, and that is why actually people started having so many children, because people were used to like more than 50% of their children dying, either due to war or lack of hygiene or disease. And Mao Zedong believed that all that is separating him now from greatness, true greatness, from controlling the world, is the fact that he still has to industrialize his country. He wanted to do essentially the same thing that Stalin did, rapidly industrialize his country. But there was one big difference between Mao and Stalin, and Mao, while equally psychotic and violent, was not successful in industrialization. The Great Leap Forward was a failure, and I explain why in some of my videos, so I won't be spending that much time here talking about it. But Mao Zedong also made one other great mistake. So he did have the potential to gain allies in the third world. So Mao Zedong realized that Nikita Khrushchev's attempts at making peace with the Americans, with the West, in 1959, Nikita Khrushchev famously visits the United States. Here you can see him talking with Marilyn Monroe, kind of a funny image. But yeah, so I would argue that Khrushchev's policy was actually very rational. He genuinely wanted to make peace, but Mao Zedong used it as an opportunity to say, well, look at the Soviets. They don't care about the colonial nations still being oppressed. They want to make peace with the West. And Mao Zedong here replaced the Soviets as being the #1 anti-colonial guy. And okay, in that aspect, I have to admit, he did have a point. Like, colonialism was still a big problem. Mozambique, for example, was colonized up until 1975. So yeah, Mao potentially could have gained a lot of allies, maybe even the entirety of all colonial nations that were still oppressed, but that didn't happen. Why is that? Well, Mao Zedong was simply too crazy. So he used to say in his speeches that if 50% of the globe needs to die in a nuclear war, that he is fine with it. And yeah, even the African dictators did not appreciate such attitudes. But there was one guy that did, Enver Hoxha, the Albanian dictator. And Albania was truly a unique country, let's say. So Hoxha even condemned the Soviets as being revisionists and too soft, and he also condemned Tito. And he was also feuding with Tito over the Kosovo issue that remains an issue today between Serbia and Kosovo and Albania. But yeah, Hoxha was truly a crazy dude, and he turned his country into the only European country that's a Chinese vassal state. Mao Zedong famously gave $25 million to Albania, a country of 3 million people, and back then dollars were much more valuable, and Mao Zedong here pretty much saved the Albanian economy because the Albanians were completely isolated from the rest of the world. So Mao did save them. He also sent quite a lot of aid to Venezuela and other countries. So that's the paradox of Maoism. On the one hand, he saved and immensely helped some undeveloped economies, but at the same time he was starving his own country, his own people. For example, the most ambitious Maoistic project was probably the fact that, and in this project Mao actually succeeded, he managed to build the railroad that connects Zambia with the Indian Ocean. The project was even too risky for the Soviets, and it costed more than $1 billion. And yeah, Mao Zedong succeeded and made the Zambian economy less dependent on the British capitalism and the British capitalists. So he did help Zambia, but yeah, he kind of bankrupted his own country, trying to help all these different nations around the world. But okay, then why did his propaganda about the Soviets now becoming traitors and him being the last true communist that actually helps the third world, why did that propaganda not resonate? I mean, he did have a point, and he did help many African nations and Albania. Well, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, and in the eyes of all these anti-colonial, anti-Western nations around the world, now suddenly this propaganda seemed absurd. Then how can you say that the Soviets have become too soft when they almost destroyed the entire world with nukes? So yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis in a way saved the Soviets from having their reputation destroyed in Africa, and also, well, that triggered Mao into doing some crazy things. So he realized, okay, my plan isn't working, I need to somehow show to the Chinese people that my country is still great, that we can boost our reputation in the world. And then he attacked India in order to expand the Chinese territory, and that didn't actually end that well for Mao, but then he continued with his crazy plan. He then made an alliance with Pakistan, and he even trained Pakistani soldiers that were then sent into Kashmir in order to start rebellions. He also sent guerrilla fighters to Thailand to start the revolution, but the revolution was crushed. It was unsuccessful, and probably Mao's biggest failure, the Indonesian coup. Well, Mao Zedong tried to do a communist coup in Indonesia, the largest Muslim nation on earth. And yeah, that didn't succeed, actually. And not only did it not succeed, but the coup was prevented by the Indonesian military, and then retaliatory killing and the genocide of all Chinese people in Indonesia started. Around 2 million Chinese people were killed by the Indonesian military and by gangsters. And of course they were helped by the United States, by Lyndon Johnson. And still in Indonesia there are statues that stand to those that actually carried out this genocide. So Indonesia never really apologized. And I would say that in a way that genocide is kind of the forgotten genocide of the 20th century. People don't really remember outside of Indonesia and China and that part of the world that genocide happened. But yeah, Mao's plan did not work again. But probably the biggest failure of Maoism was the Cultural Revolution. If it wasn't for the Cultural Revolution, China would probably be even more developed and powerful today. So what happened during the Cultural Revolution? So Mao Zedong tried to wipe out religion. And what's funny, the Cultural Revolution, as crazy and violent as it was, it did have let's say, a feminist message. So Mao emphasized that women should also fight like men and kill the traitors. But of course, he never really defined who the traitors were. So yeah, that was the problem. And rarely in history did so many, like, so much pointless violence happened that you didn't even really define who are the traitors. For example, the most absurd and scary part of the cultural revolution, to me at least, was the fact that Mao Zedong armed children in schools and colleges and told them kill the traitors. And what happened? Well, children started killing their professors. Often even they raped their female professors. So yeah, that didn't work. But okay, unlike Stalin, Mao killed very few of his troops. The Cultural Revolution was also supposed to make the Chinese society more militaristic. It was supposed to actually be the military purging other centers of power in China. And yeah, one other crazy aspect of the Cultural Revolution was all exams were abolished because allegedly they were oppressive. And the only significant military leader that was killed was Lin Biao, a genius general that, according to Jung Chang, actually won this civil war for Mao, for the communists. And yeah, the irony was that Lin Biao was a great supporter of the Cultural Revolution, and he got killed in the same way in which Yezhov, who was in charge of the Soviet secret services, got killed by Stalin in the end, accused of treason in a very poetic way. And here we can see the Chinese people burning all the religious texts and trying to build the new utopian society from the ashes of the old one. But yeah, what happened is that Mao essentially killed all the most educated people in his country, and that can be good. That can be good for the economy. But there was one weird consequence of the Cultural Revolution that ended up being beneficial. Jung Chang argues, and Archie Brown also, that in that craziness, something good happened, and that is the Chinese bureaucracy. They lost faith in communism, in old school, like Maoist communism, and in the Soviet Union, that never really happened, which is why, according to Archie Brown, the Soviets could not transition so peacefully and orderly into capitalism. Their state fell apart. While Deng Xiaoping, who himself lost faith in communism because he was a victim of the Cultural Revolution, his son, who was a student, was forced to jump out of a window and he broke his legs. He was fleeing from the radicals that were trying to kill him. And yeah, Deng Xiaoping then realized that, well, actually, maybe we can transition to capitalism without even officially changing the name of our party and the aesthetic of our ideology. And that's why China managed to kind of peacefully transition into capitalism, because even the bureaucrats, those that survived, realized that something is not good about this hardline communist system that existed under Mao, and they were ready to welcome a more liberal figure like Deng Xiaoping, because at least Deng Xiaoping was not Mao. At least he was not going to kill them. But okay, if you liked this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more videos like this.